Greetings, welcome back to Southpaw RC. Thanks very much for joining us. Okay, today we have the rear differential from the FTX Bugsta. Not sounding too pretty. Not supposed to be sounding like that. Don't know whether you can see in there, but the two main gears are not damaged, so it's an internal job of the actual diff itself. Now the diff unit itself is about £15 to buy, so about $20, so not expensive. So we'll be taking this whole unit out and switching it out for a new one. But to get to the last two screws to take the diff apart, we need to take off the clutch. So this little hex nut was coming off, and then the 5mm nut, which has got the spring behind it to load the tension on your clutch plates, then the spur gear and the other plate comes off, and then we can get to these two nuts to undo the gearbox. So let's start with that now. Right, so now we have the clutch bearing and the spring. Take those out and line those up. Now this little cup sits on the drive shaft there as well. That makes sure that the bearing sits in the correct place. So now we're just going to pull gently on the cup, and then we get a pin that falls out there. And let's take out the clutch pad. There's the clutch pad. Okay, and then we've got, as you can see, your spur gear. So that just slides off. There's your spur gear. Not in terrible condition, but it's not exactly new. Then the second clutch plate and pad comes off, and a little tiny little pin, and that is your clutch assembly done. So that little cup sits the other side of the clutch. If I can just put that in the hand there, you can see. Just sits the other side of the clutch. Now then, here is the actual differential. Now I can feel that chugging on the way around. There's definitely something not quite right. These two bolts out here, let's get these two out, and then we can finally see the diff. Okay, 1, 2, and it's fallen off. Excellent. Now we can separate the diff. Okay, 2 more screws. Now then, let's take the diff apart. Okay, let's rest that there. Take a look at the internals of here. There's a lot of gunk, but the actual shaft itself, the head there seems to be fine. No teeth missing. But you can see that in there. There's no teeth missing on that cog there, so that's very handy. So it's going to be that something is awry inside this diff here. So doesn't sound bad. I don't really understand. Those bearings definitely need cleaning out, so that could certainly be helpful. And it needs some grease, definitely, but I can't see any sign of damage. So I'm going to soak these bearings in some WD-40, clean those up, and then re-grease the head on the entire unit and put it all back together, and then we'll give it a listen and see what it sounds like once we've done that. Alright, so we have completely taken the diff apart and re-greased the internals as well as the externals. I've repacked the actual differential case with some grease and lavished it in there nice and thick. The bearings have been cleaned and we've put that back together. So we're rebuilding the clutch here. That's the first section of the clutch with the back plate holder and the pin to line up the clutch plate. That's the first clutch plate on with the first clutch pad in place. Make sure you line up the little divots on the inside of the spur gear. Putting the spur gear in place and sticking the second pin to hold the second clutch plate in place after we've put on the second clutch pad, which as you can see there. So line these little grooves up with the extensions onto the clutch pad so that it sits in there nice and tightly. It's pretty easy to line up. Then drop the second clutch plate over the top. Just line it up over the pin markings there. That will keep it in place when it's spinning. And then you put the little cup that holds the bearing and also holds the spring in place that puts the tension onto your clutch. And then you screw the nut down. You want it between 12 and 14 millimeters from the end of the nut to the cup. Once you've pushed the cup on and tighten that up, measure that between 12 and 14 to set the strength of your clutch, how much clutch you're actually giving the car. And if it needs any further adjustment once it's refitted, you can see the nut there that's on the connected to the drive shaft. You can adjust the clutch mechanism through that as well. Right, thanks very much for joining us on Southpaw RC. I'll see you on the next one.